What's up, y'all? On today's video, we are talking pros and cons of schools here in the Twin Cities. Minnesota has a great reputation, but obviously nobody's perfect. How's it going, friends? My name is Bradford Schulz, and I work with the hardest working real estate team in the game. We are called To the Twin Cities, and this channel aims to be the best resource on the internet when it comes to Twin Cities schools. If that interests you, feel free to subscribe and then click the little bell to get notified every time we post videos. And if you want our help buying a home here in the Twin Cities or navigating the school systems, feel free to reach out to me at bradford@tothetwincities.com. I'd love to help. All right, so let's dive into the pros and cons and maybe a couple things you might want to consider. So up first, quality schools. And as I mentioned at the beginning, generally Minnesota and the Twin Cities has a reputation for strong educational systems with highly regarded schools for academic excellence. For example, the top 20 schools here in the Twin Cities all have graduation rates of 90% or higher. And we have a lot of long-standing, strong public school districts like Wayzata, Minnetonka, Eden Prairie, Edina, and Orono. There's others as well, but those are just some great examples of really long-standing, strong public school systems that we have here in the Twin Cities. And in fact, Wayzata is ranked the 46th best district in the country out of like 11,000 school districts. The Twin Cities has 170 ranked high schools, with 64 of those in the top 25% in the nation. School districts like Orono, Wayzata, and Minnetonka all rank within the top 100 school districts in the country. And one thing I'd like to mention too is just community involvement. Twin Cities schools usually have really active parent-teacher organizations with local support for schools that really helps create a sense of community and investment in our students' education here. All right, another pro is diverse educational options. Going way back to 1992, Minnesota was the first state to open a charter school, passing the first charter school law in 1991, followed by California after that. And with that said, Minnesota really seems to try to stay ahead of the curve, be on the cutting edge of different educational options available to students. Whether it be from public to private, charter to magnet, specialized, Montessori, immersion, arts, there's certainly an option available for you here in the Twin Cities. And I know that these options are available around the country in the different metro areas. It's just that Minnesota's really had a strong focus on these additional options outside of the traditional public school system. And in the spirit of all of these diverse options, the Twin Cities school districts have always sort of been at the forefront of inclusivity and diversity. We actually have 2 school districts here in the Twin Cities that rank in the top 24 overall diversity. The first being the North St. Paul Maplewood Oakdale School District, and the second being the Burnsville Egan Savage School District, both in the top 20, ranked 15th and 17th respectively. All right, the third pro that we'll mention here today is educational funding. And I'm going to break that up into 3 parts. The first I'm going to say is levy proposals. In the 2023 November elections, 2/3 of districts seeking funding for whether it be building projects or just their operating budgets, like what we call operating levies, did see at least one of their levies pass. And in votes over school funding, school districts in the metro area really won this year compared to, say, greater Minnesota. There were some districts or cities or areas of Minnesota that did struggle a little bit, and in the cons, we'll talk about some of those there. And the second point to educational funding I'd like to make is per pupil funding. Per student in Minnesota, grades K through 12, it's about $17,000, which puts Minnesota at 19th in the country and above average for the United States. And generally speaking, about 90% of that funding comes from the state level and about 10% from the federal level. And the third one to educational funding that I'll bring up definitely made national news this year, and that was our governor did sign a bill for free school meals. So in March of 2023, Minnesota's Governor Walz signed the free school meals bill into law, following in the footsteps of the only 2 states that already had it, which was California and Maine. So in March, when Minnesota signed this bill into law, a number of other states did as well. Colorado, New Mexico, Vermont, Michigan, Massachusetts. They all implemented a free school breakfast and free school lunch program for all students. And the state has slated about $380 million for the first 2 years of this program for all of the schools that participate, public, private, charter, magnet, etc. And when I was reading about it, this is available to all. It does not require an application. The only caveat is if you want a la carte or snacks, you do still have to pay for those. All right, coming in at the fourth pro that we'll do here is specialized programs, sports, and extracurriculars. And again, like I've mentioned before, other states and metros have these options, arts, STEM, language immersion, but the Twin Cities and Minnesota in general has really put forth a lot of effort into lifting up these schools and making them available and great for all to use. If you're moving to the Twin Cities and a good sports program is important to you, we do have a handful of nationally recognized programs here in the Twin Cities. Wayzata always comes up as a big one, Eden Prairie, and where I came from, Apple Valley High School was always known for their wrestling program. I don't know if they still are today, but they've always been one of the top wrestling programs in the country. And as I was doing this research, I learned something new too. Throughout my entire life here, I always heard the term PSEO, which stands for Post-Secondary Enrollment Options. And I didn't know this, but Minnesota actually started this program. So something I always just thought was a general thing for students actually started here in Minnesota in 1985 and has since been adopted by a few other states. But essentially what it is for students that are excelling in high school, so sophomores, juniors, and seniors, etc., they can take college level courses in high school and will actually be credited for their college careers going forward. And the best part about that is it's free. So you get free college level education while you're attending high school, and those credits do work when you go to college. And obviously there's more pros than the four that we mentioned here. We just picked these ones because they felt like they really stood out. Minnesota has really put strong focus on these diverse educational options. They've been at the forefront of a lot of different programs like the PSEO or the free school meals. And so these are the ones that we wanted to mention, but of course there are many more pros to Twin City schools. All right, so diving into the cons, the first one I want to mention is achievement gaps. Not alone in this issue, of course. It's something that many school districts and states and cities have experienced, but the Twin Cities do struggle at times with achievement gaps among students from different socioeconomic backgrounds. Disparities in funding, resources, and opportunities can lead to unequal educational opportunities. But I will mention, in doing research about achievement gaps, there did seem to be some debate over exactly what those achievement metrics are and how to define those gaps. So I'm speaking to it more generally here because it does seem to be a point of contention at times throughout the country and in different ways. All right, coming in second here, this was a pro, but I'm also going to mention as a con, and that is educational funding. Despite being funded above average, generally speaking, a study did show in certain districts, Minnesota districts were disproportionately funding some and underfunding others. Whereas some districts were funded at, say, plus 200%, others weren't even meeting the 100% metric of funding in the state of Minnesota. And again, although I mentioned this as part of that educational funding pro, there is always still the con when it comes to levies and levy proposals. Typically, it is Greater Minnesota that sort of takes it on the chin when it comes to levy proposals, but losses were recorded in November 2023. Losses were recorded in places like Rochester, Duluth, and other cities in the Twin Cities metro like Lakeville, Farmington, Inver Grove Heights, and Brooklyn Center. So even though we did have a lot of the levies pass here in 2023, and specifically in the metro area, there of course were some that were not passed. All right, next on the list of cons, and this may come as no surprise if you're coming from a warm state to the great state of Minnesota, but we are cold here and weather can be a con in terms of school transportation. We often help people that don't even realize how robust our infrastructure is for snow, cold temps, general winter weather, whereas some states may shut down. We keep rolling here in Minnesota. Now with that said, we do get some pretty harsh winters here, and even though we are well tuned for the cold and snow, there are still school delays, closures affecting both just the actual school day but also extracurriculars. So that is something to be aware of if you're moving to the Twin Cities. And although I don't mind the cold, I do have some young ones, and I can tell you that an early morning at the bus stop in the winter can be a bit brutal. And with that said, especially with the younger ones, something you may not think about is the amount of stuff you have to lug to and from school. And in the morning, I have to give my daughter winter boots, full snow pants, heavy winter coat, a scarf or neck gaiter, earmuffs, hat, gloves. and then she has to go to school and take all of that off and put it in her locker. So it's a lot for a, say, elementary school student to lug back and forth. And as myself, as a high school student, and probably most high school students, you just go as you are and you just deal with the cold here in Minnesota. You just rough it, which might teach you some humility here too. And so with the weather conversation out of the way, coming in number 4, I'll talk about district boundaries a little bit. Again, not a problem that just Minnesota or Twin Cities school districts experience. This is something that every school district experiences, but again, it's something you want to be cognizant of when you're choosing somewhere to move to in the Twin Cities. You might say, I'm going to move to the north side of Lakeville and I want to attend Lakeville schools, but not so fast. You will probably attend an Apple Valley school. So one way you can get around that as you're looking here in the Twin Cities, if you're interested in a certain area, look up the school district for that area, and most school districts, if not all, search on their website for something called a school finder tool, and they'll have a spot where you can type in an address of an area that you're interested in, and it will populate the schools that you would attend if you lived at, say, 123 Maple Street. So it would tell you the elementary, middle, and high schools that your student would attend. So this gives you a little bit of a leg up on where you choose to go and not getting sort of blindsided by thinking I'm going to the Lakeville School District, but I'm actually going to end up in the Apple Valley School District. And just note, both of those options are very good. And to note, even when you're within a school district, sometimes there's nuance where you think, oh, I live really close to this school, but you actually might end up going to another school. So again, utilizing that school finder tool on a district's website will be very helpful. And now that we've gotten through some of the pros and cons, I want to just, give you a couple other things to consider. And the first being academic standards. If you're interested in learning more about the academic standards that the state of Minnesota has put forth, you can visit the Minnesota Department of Education website, and I'll provide the link here for you. And another thing too to consider is that with all the great school districts that we have, all the great options that we have, whether it be arts, STEM, immersion, public, private, charter, magnet, Montessori, all of these great options, when you're done with that, we have a lot of really great higher education options here in the Twin Cities. There's the University of Minnesota, there's McAllister College, there's St. Thomas, there's the Carlson School of Management. So there are a lot of opportunities at the end of your high school career to go into another great option here in the Twin Cities. And if you'd like our help buying a home here in the Twin Cities and navigating the school systems, reach out to me at bradford@tothetwincities.com. I'd love to help, and we'll see you next time.